Welcome to the Talbotron 3000.
I found myself so frustrated with constant talk of victory and overcoming and happy day and every day is great, but it came at the cost of the cross. Ego is a sin before the Lord. If you think anything of yourself, you're horrible. Well, what about people who struggle with imposter syndrome?
But it's not about thinking less of yourself.
Yeah.
It's thinking of yourself less.
Leadership is not what it's supposed to do for me. It's what God is going to do through me for others.
Nicole Martin, welcome to the Talbotron 3000.
This is awesome.
This is
Thank
our
you.
fun van.
This
is
fun.
I'm living in a van down by the river. I just drove across from California to Texas. We're in Texas. You're speaking tonight at the Lead the Way tour stop here at Lanier Theological Library, talking about the state of the church. Love that you are.
Yep.
You have served in multiple roles. Right now, you're at Christianity Today.
Yep.
You also have a new book out called Nailing It.
Yep.
And it specifically talks about why successful leadership demands suffering and surrender. Has anyone bought that book when it says suffering? It's kind of like, really?
Yeah.
I think what separates the good leaders and the bad leaders is often the ability to have hard conversations that are painful.
Totally agree.
So
Totally
talk to me about the thesis of Nailing It.
Yep.
And what you've learned in leadership over the years.
Yeah, I love that leaning into suffering, because I think it's not just leadership, it's the way of the cross that we like to avoid.
Yeah.
And it kind of came from this frustration. I found myself so frustrated with constant talk of victory and overcoming and resurrection, happy day, and every day is great. And I was like, but it came at the cost of the cross.
Yeah.
And I found myself sitting, listening to people promote this glorious resurrection lifestyle without ever hinting at, oh, you will have to take up a cross. So for me, leadership is about the recognition that we have resurrection victory because of the cross.
Okay, so that
that's what
theological grounding in and
Yes.
around the cross, the
Yes.
suffering.
Yes.
So how does Christ's suffering relate specifically to ours in leadership?
Oh my gosh. It relates to the fact that we, if we want to lead well, are going to have to nail some things to the cross. Okay. Some principles, some outdated practices, some ways of the world that we think fit for us, but really don't fit for the cross. Okay. And if we can really successfully do that, then we will experience a resurrection for the glory of God and prayerfully for the healing and the good of the teams we serve.
Yeah, your title's a bit like, I don't know, it's got like multiple meanings.
Yeah, it does.
Which is great, because it makes you think, so am I nailing it? Am I getting it done? And then your subtitle is like, it's like, oh, okay. So what am I nailing to the cross as a leader? Is it an ungodly practice? Is it a bad, tell me more.
I'm suggesting we have to nail, and the way I'm using nail is reframe. Right. We have to reframe some traditional things that we thought we needed to lead, like reframing power, reframing our ego, reframing things like speed and scale. Yeah. And if we can really surrender those things to the cross, literally allow them to die at the feet of the cross, then we can resurrect that same thing, but in a different, redeemed way.
A godly way of doing leadership. Now, because leadership, I mean, I love leadership. I'm a professor of leadership.
Yes,
though I confess I'm not teaching on that much anymore. I was at Wheaton. I taught leadership twice a year, but now I'm doing mission over in Oxford. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I miss it. I need to teach a leadership class at Talbot, and I will.
You need it.
But when we talk about this, I talk about very frequently about the pain and challenges of leadership. There's a great quote from, I think it's Colin Powell, who talked about, one of his soldiers, I'm not sure if it's majors or generals that report to him. They said, all I do is bring you problems. And he said something was really insightful. He said, well, that's what I expect. I expect you to solve the things that you don't need my help.
Yes.
So, my director of operations, she only brings me difficulties because she solved the other things.
That's right.
So that means my life is a never-ending series of people meeting with me and telling me about their difficulties.
Yes.
But that's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So maybe one way to put it, how do I die to myself and the idea that leadership should be a perpetual group of people telling me how awesome I am and how happy things are?
Oh my gosh. See, that's where I think we really wrestle. We need to rethink what leadership is. The moment I think leadership is supposed to do something for me, then I'm actually not leading at all. Okay. Leadership is not what it's supposed to do for me. It's what God is going to do through me for others. And if I can start thinking about myself as a leader that serves, I know I despise servant leadership as a phrase because it's been so manipulated, but it is at its core the goal of leadership. And that's why I'm saying you do have some suffering.
Yeah.
When I'm raising my daughters and saying to them, you're going to lead one day, I'm not saying, and you're going to be famous and everyone's going to love you. Well, who wouldn't want that? Everybody wants that.
Sure. Everyone wants to be lauded as a leader.
Yeah. But leadership in these days, in these last and evil days, is going to be about the conflict resolution, the solving of problems that go beyond us, the ability to be still and say, God, what are you saying? Where do we need to go? The ability to be countercultural. I know the world is moving this way, but we got to go this way. And that takes a whole lot of sacrifice.
Yeah. And sacrifice takes courage. So how do we as leaders kind of, to start with, gain the courage of leaning into some of the suffering that you're talking about here? Where does that even start?
I mean, isn't that the joy of the cross? I'm never being asked or invited to do something Christ hasn't already done. My ability to lean into suffering isn't because I'm so strong. It's because Christ has already gone before me. Paul, to know him and the fellowship of his sufferings, the more I lean into suffering, the more I get to know Jesus. And that's my ultimate aim, not just to lead and be known. I want to know Jesus and I want to live like Jesus. And then my leadership comes out of that knowing and that living.
All right. And your whole theme is to reframe.
Yes.
You consistently talk about reframing certain things over and over again. Power, ego, speed, trust, performance, perfection, loyalty, scale, are all things that are there. Let's take a look at a couple of them. Let's take a look at the one of speed.
Yeah.
How we got to reframe that?
Oh, Lord. I struggle with this. That's why I said, oh, Lord. That's why I picked it, not.
I know you're always doing something.
Thank you very much. This is not a book of having arrived. This is a book of a journey that I'm processing.
That's my favorite kind of book. Yeah.
Oh, but I'm learning that it's actually not about how fast or how slow I'm going. It's about whose time I'm keeping. Okay. Am I keeping my own clock, my own time, my own deliverables because this is what the world says or some pressure beyond me says I need to do? Or am I actually keeping in step with God? This is the model of, Lord, tell me when. And when you say go, I will go. But if you say nothing, or if you say sit, I will sit. And that's what I think leadership is about. I mean, look at all of the dynamic stories you have of leaders who start things at just the right time. You have the start of you version, or, the start of One Hope, or the start of all these other organizations. It's often a leader who discerns a moment in time, not their own time or somebody else's sense of time, but God's kairos moment. So that's what I think reframing speed looks like. Not fastest in the world, but resetting my time according to God's time.
Okay, fascinating. All right, let's get to the one of ego.
Oh, yes.
Because I literally have a website named edstetzer.com. We're driving.
It's great.
We're driving in a van right now.
Yes, and your name is right up there.
My name over my
It's
affection.
awesome.
The first, remember the marketing people like, well, you're driving around. They want to put my face on the thing. I'm like, I'm sleeping in this van. So, but I did compromise. I want to shrink my font, but nevertheless.
Yeah.
So how do I know? Because there is a tie that the successful organization has a leader who is stepped into that role and led the organization well. So how does that work?
Correct.
Reframe that for us.
So I suggest that ego has everything to do with your worldview. I mean, you're missions guy, so you totally understand the worldviews. And there is no one solution for your ego. It's all about the context. And the core of your ego has to come from knowing you are deeply and sincerely and truly beloved of God. When I know that my source of ego, my source of being who I am, comes from being a loved disciple, then I know when I show up at an event that I should show up in the fullness of who God made me to be without any shame. And I also know when I show up in a church context or when I'm at the Mission Society and I'm serving a meal, that I am not the center of the story. But my frustration with the ego chapter, and I can tell you when I was writing it, I was wrestling because everything I'd heard was you need to tamp everything down.
Right.
Ego is a sin before the Lord. If you think anything of yourself, you're horrible. Well, what about people who struggle with imposter syndrome? Sure. What about people who struggle with low self-esteem? Sure. So it took me years to figure out that it was okay for me to believe I was somebody. But then I have to recalibrate that according to the cross. My ability to show up well is really my ability to know that I'm loved. And I still test that today. Before I walk in a room, do I know that I'm deeply loved by God? Do I know I have nothing to prove? I have nothing to gain? I am so loved by God. I have nothing more that this room can give me that helps to anchor me.
I love that. I love that. C.S. Lewis did not say this, but the expression he's often credited with is that, it's not about thinking less of yourself. Yeah. It's thinking of yourself less.
Yes. Love that.
And I think that's helpful.
Yes.
But there is a healthy, even Collins and Good to Great, there is a healthy, humble, but a healthy ego approach. Ego
Yes.
as a term is a value neutral term, but there's a
Exactly.
healthy approach to
Yes.
that as well. That makes a difference. Okay. Loyalty was one that was interesting to me. Where does loyalty fit into that?
So that was one that I felt was really unique but necessary. When you do an autopsy of fallen leaders in particular, you always find a group of people around them that, in some words, were enablers, that were the people who kind of allowed things to happen and said nothing. And then you peel back another layer, and these were people who had been served by the leader, who felt indebted to a leader, and felt like they belonged because they were faithful, not because they were qualified. So if we value as leaders loyalty over everything else,
Right.
then we too will be prone to that unfortunate reality of having a whole bunch of people around us that like us, but don't tell us the truth. So how do we create environments where we can still serve people and have people around us that will affirm us, but also people who love God more than they love us?
Right. That's good. And we see just week after week.
Oh,
You know, we're in Texas. How many times do I need this
Yeah,
story
yeah,
that starts
yeah.
with Dallas area
Yes.
pastor? And you can see some of those things. And that evolution
Every
of a
time.
court,
Every
Sandra
time.
Stanley wrote a great article called The Evolution of a Court.
Yes.
Where when you're a significant leader,
Yeah.
people just are attracted to you. Your jokes get funnier. Nobody speaks to
That's right.
speaks to
That's
the
right.
criticism. All right. So for pastors and church leaders, that's going to be most people listening to the Talbotron 3000 interviews.
Talbotron.
What would your advice be to them about maybe things they're missing in their leadership that you would help them reframe? I asked a couple. What are some others?
I think the portion on power is important for every leader. You need power. God has given you power to exercise that power in the context of whatever leadership capacity you have. The question isn't how do I maximize my power? The question ought to be how can I distribute power in a way that honors God? And the more I talk about it post-writing, because there's like the writing revelation, then there's like the post-writing revelation. My post-writing revelation, I feel even more strongly that the best way I can lead is by distributing and delegating the power God has given me. The moment I start thinking, I'm better than these people, whoever these people are, at my table, on my team, in my audience, it's the moment I've lost sight of what it looks like to lead with grace and humility. So, there's a lot to consider.
All right. So I want to be a more effective leader.
Yeah.
First, you can get nailing it when people do that.
Yeah. Nice.
But what else would you say would be a good place for me to start my journey to be a more effective leader?
Be a better disciple.
Okay.
Don't
Unpack that a
forget.
little more.
So, one of the examples that I think about when I have this image of what it looks like to be a good leader, I think about the scene of Harriet Tubman. So she's carrying people through the Underground Railroad. She's got a line of slaves on their way to freedom behind her. And her biography, her autobiography, even the movie depictions show her doing something powerful. She gets into the forest. She stops. She shushes everybody. She closes her eyes and she listens. And she's listening, A, for the dogs. Are we being followed? Where's the enemy? How close is the enemy? B, what's the condition of the people that are following me? Is there heavy breathing? Is anybody wounded? Are there children crying? Do I need to stop? And then she's also listening for God. Am I still going in the right direction? And she is said to have stopped sometimes and rested just because God said it's time to stop. She doesn't know what's ahead. She couldn't hear the enemy, but if God said stop, she stops. Other times she just keeps going because she didn't feel the need to stop. That to me is what it looks like to be a good disciple and a good leader. Are you listening for the tracks behind you? Are you listening for the condition of the people you follow? Are you listening for the voice of God? Are you listening for your own heartbeat? How am I? Am I hungry? Do I need a nap? Am I okay? So this capacity to listen, I think, sits at the core of what it means to be a good leader and disciple.
So helpful. So Nicole, you're at Christianity Today.
Yes.
Help us understand where Christianity Today is going,
Yeah.
what its purpose is. I'll just be transparent. I used to be there.
Yes, that's right.
I'm looking from the outside.
Yeah.
I'm not sure sometimes. So
Yeah.
tell me what I need to know.
So CT, one of the things I love and one of the reasons why I'm there is because we want to elevate the stories and ideas of the kingdom of God. And we're doing that in a variety of ways, but I think where we're going is to help normalize what it looks like to tell stories that bring life, that bring hope, and also that bring truth. And this is the hard part. Because we all know bad news sells. I mean, how many people say to me, hey, when are you guys going to tell a story about good news? Well, the next time you actually read and share a story about good news, that's when we'll tell it.
They don't.
But I see CT in a world where polarization is increasing, in a world where people don't care what another person thinks. I see CT elevating stories and ideas that help create empathy. I see CT helping to broaden horizons so that people will read something and get a perspective they wouldn't have had otherwise. And I hope to see CT as a space where people get to know what's happening in their own lives, but also just happening in the church. I hope we get to talk about church.
So I see CT as having lost the confidence of a significant part of the church.
Yes, I hear that.
So
I hear that.
what does that look like? And can CT, because you're going to be at a leadership transition.
Right.
What does, and I'm not saying everybody, but I don't think
Yeah.
that's a secret. I don't think somebody who's loves CT would disagree with what I just said. So what does that look like for the future? I know you're not the person making these decisions, but how can CT gain the hopes of evangelicals?
That is an excellent question. I hope we continue to ask that question. I would say the future is in the past. And here's what I mean. We were doing the redesign of our logo. We went back to the first initial issues of Christianity Today, pulled from that tradition and brought it forward in the future. When you look at how CT started with Billy Graham, 1956, his goal was to do CT, to create CT as a space for pastors, for the church. I think that's our opportunity for the future. And you're right, we have lost that. We did an impact study last year, and the group that we've lost the most are pastors.
Okay.
So this is an opportunity we have to actively campaign in support of the church. I think that is in support of discipleship, in support of missions, in support of the ideas that affect pastors and concern pastors the most. We have a chance to do that. And I hope we take advantage of it.
Nicole Martin, the book's Nailing It. Thanks for joining us in Talbotron 3000.
So fun.